From unsolved mysteries to unexplained phenomena, from comedy gold to relationship fails, Amazon Music's got the most ad-free top podcasts, included with Prime. Because the only thing that should interrupt your listening is, well, nothing. Download the Amazon Music app today.
Just when you thought America was turning a corner toward free market individualism, boom, here comes another poll showing youth are embracing socialism once again. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Socialism in America, where is this coming from? Is it coming from the education system? Is it coming from a failure of families to teach the spirit of America to their children? Is it coming from failing economies and people feeling disillusioned? Or is it just coming from a natural shift in the culture leading to a natural shift in the politics that follows a national surge in growth that follows prosperity? Once people feel prosperous, then they feel as if they can turn their eyes toward giving to others less fortunate. And unfortunately, it's not really the human way to dig into one's own pockets to give, but rather it's so much easier to turn to government and demand government gives, right? And then you can pat yourself on the back for doing a good job. So where is this socialism coming from? Before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That is the faith-based news outreach of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California, RLN, Real Life Network. Go to it, and you will see included among its esteemed lineup, Bold and Blunt. I'm happy to say I've been included as a Bold and Blunt podcast provider at RLN for some time. And while you're there, check out all the other faith-based news offerings RLN puts out there. Great site for news. You can also get Bold and Blunt, of course, by going to WashingtonTimes.com, where if you scroll to the bottom of the page there and click on the newsletter section and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, you can sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter. Just enter your email address and you'll get delivered right to your email box Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My Bold and Blunt podcast, as well as all the commentaries that I write all day long at the Washington Times. You can also get Bold and Blunt, of course, wherever podcasts are available. And I want to quickly mention, because it figures in well with this theme, my latest nonfiction book is called God-Given or Bust: Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. And in it, I argue that the biggest battle we fight for in America is not having Republicans in office versus Democrats, not even booting all the socialists out of office, not taking over the school systems with traditional conservative-minded school board members and teachers, and fighting to keep the family unit, the traditional family unit, together. These are all great wars to wage. These are all great campaigns to wage and win. But if you want to sum up the biggest battle in America to save our individual rights for the here and long term, it's over God-given rights and liberties. It's over God-given. Because if you don't have God-given, then you have government granted. The two don't coexist, right? If you have God-given rights and liberties, then government automatically goes into that role of humble service to the people that founding fathers intended politicians and the bureaucrats to be in that role, right? So if you want to sum up all the battles that are going on in America, whether for the education system, parental rights, economic freedom, less regulation, they can all be summed up under the heading of God-given, and thus the title. It's God-given or bust, right? It's God-given or America goes bust. So, as I said, if you want to check out that book, it figures nicely into the theme of today's podcast. Socialism, socialism. Why socialists should become teachers. This is a headline from the Democratic Socialists of America, right? It's dsausa.org. I don't even, that doesn't even belong in America. That's a URL that has no business being in America, but here it is. And this came out in 2018, but I find it so enlightening about what's taken place in America's public school system, and really so frightening too. But it puts forth, if you're wondering why your teachers have become like this and why it seems like your children in school aren't the priority that there should be, yeah, blame the teachers unions, right? Yeah, blame the Federal Department of Education, but really what's taking place in the school system is the purposeful strategic infiltration of democratic socialists who have recruited teachers over the years to put in the school system. And remember, when we say democratic socialists, what we're really saying is socialists. What is democratic socialist, right? Zoran Mamdani in New York City calls himself a democratic socialist. So does Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There is no such thing. Socialists put the democratic in front of that label because they want to soften it. They want to fool people into thinking, you know, we're democratic and we're socialist. We take the best of both worlds. Well, you can't mix things, right? You can't mix evil with good and still have good. It gets watered. So when you talk about democratic socialism, you're talking about socialism, which is to say, if you want to be even more truthful, you're talking about Marxism and communism. The Democrats love to play with the narrative, but we shouldn't let them, which is coincidentally a case that I made in another book, one of my best-selling books, Socialists Don't Sleep, Christians Must Rise or America Will Fall. Gee, I get to bill a lot of my books in this show, but that's because socialism is such a passion for me to destroy in America. Oh, socialists, they drive me nuts. They're soul-sucking and they're freedom-stealing, and they do it with such smiles on their face and expect you to thank them, right? They expect you to thank them for destroying, for their destructive ways. All right, so 2018. Why socialists should become teachers. This is, reading right from the site, a publication of the Democratic Socialist Labor Commission and the Young Democratic Socialists of America. It's a long pamphlet here that's posted, but I'm just going to read some bullet points. This pamphlet, the author writes, argues that socialists should take jobs as teachers and other school-based workers for the political, economic, and social potential the industry holds. So here you have socialists openly advocating for individuals to go into the field of public education in America, teachers, administrators, staffers, right? They're calling for basically the takeover of America's school systems. And they have many, many reasons. They see the school systems as such a great ground in which to advance their destructive ideology. Of course, they don't call it destructive, but it is. Why is teaching strategic, they write? Socialists have a long history of involvement in the workplace. I'm reading from this pamphlet. Socialists believe that workers create society's wealth and that the working class is the only class capable of governing society democratically. It is at the point of production that workers create value beyond what they are compensated for. This is what Karl Marx called surplus value, which is realized as profit. See how the socialists just, quote from Marx, right? So democratic socialists, same as socialists, same as Marxists, same as communists. While the vast majority of teachers are public employees, this doesn't remove us from the domain of capital. While teachers don't make a product that is sold on the market, we are necessary in the reproduction of a capitalist economy and the perpetuation of classes. It is teachers who train, here we go, both socially and technically, the workers of the future. So they see teachers as having a critical role in advancing socialism, Marxism, communism, through the training of the leaders of the future, what they call the workers of the future. So this is strategic to them. This isn't something, be a teacher, help influence, the next generation of American leaders to be productive members of society, to be critical thinkers and leaders of society, to be successful in their endeavors, both individually and as a family unit, leading to a community unit, leading to the benefit of the nation as a whole. No, this is socialist looking at the school systems as a key component in advancing their destructive, evil narrative, ideology, principles, and agendas through America long into our future. It's the takedown of America from within. And I would implore you to go to the Democratic Socialists of America's website and check out some of their very open campaigns, right? If you think, for instance, that the strikes of the teachers' unions in West Virginia just started from a grassroots movement, I can tell you the Democratic Socialists of America, by their very own statements posted openly on their very own websites, had a crucial hand in bringing that apart. You remember that back in 2018? 9 days, a statewide strike of teachers where they just took over the state capitol, the legislature. They just, openly advocated in the streets. It was just a vicious, ugly time in America where kids were, just shuttered off to the side while the teachers had their heyday, their pink shirt or red shirt wearing heyday. And we saw all those very ugly, screaming videos coming out of West Virginia. And they crowed about a big, big win, right? Well, this was orchestrated in large part by the Democratic Socialists of America. So when you have kids being trained in their school systems by their oh-so-friendly, smiling, helpful, we love the kids, teachers in schools, right, to love socialism, then when they graduate high school and then go on to the breeding grounds that have of higher learning for socialists and Marxists and leftovers and holdovers from the 1960s activism, to put the final nails in the coffins of critical thinking of these young minds, and bring forth a highly educated batch of Marxists willing to take their marching orders from Karl Marx and Lenin and the Democrat Party from high school into college, into the field of work in America, right? Into the political world, into the economic world, into the educational world, into the social justice fields, right? Corporate America and DEI and wokeism and all that. What chance does America have to stay free for the long term? This is why you get youth in America embracing socialism at an alarming turn. And there's a new poll out, a new survey out. It's conducted by Heartland Institute, which is a great organization, heartland.org. You have to go there and check it out, as well as dsausa.org. Those are two sites now you have to check out. The Heartland Institute conducted this survey in conjunction with Rasmussen, and they found, alarmingly, listen to this number, 53% of young Americans, those under the age of 40, likely voters, want to see a socialist as president in 2028. Well, there's your Democratic Socialists of America at work, right? Congratulations to them. Jim Lakely, Vice President of Heartland, is here to discuss. Jim, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt to discuss this so important survey. I appreciate you coming on.
It's so great to be with you.
Can't wait to dive into the data here. You guys at Heartland, in conjunction with Rasmussen, have found 53% of young voters want a socialist to win the White House in 2028. What is going on?
What is going on is that socialism still seems to have quite a romantic attachment, or a bit of romance about it, I should say, among younger Americans. What's interesting about this poll, and I have to say, we love the guys at Rasmussen, and they love us. Every time we've done a poll with them, we do them a few times a year. They're as shocked as we are, and to see what they see that Americans, believe, especially when it comes to the appeal of socialism. What's interesting about this poll, and it was you can find the poll at heartland.org. You can read all the crosstabs and everything yourself. It'll be there. It'll be up there on our website, easy to find for a couple of weeks for sure. But what's interesting is that, and I want to emphasize, this is just younger voters. The only people polled in this are likely voters under the age of 40. And what's also interesting is that these younger voters under the age of 40 gave Donald Trump a 48% approval rating. Now, that's better than Biden by miles, and it's even better than Obama's during, I think, most, if not all, of his presidency, except for, the usual honeymoon that most presidents get in the very beginning. So these are people who are, maybe they're not MAGA, but they're MAGA adjacent. They don't hate Donald Trump. They like him. They have an approval rating for him. Yet they embrace some very, very troubling policies and outlooks on life. I mean, as you said, 53% in this poll said they would like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win the 2028 presidential election. And then we also found in this poll, 76% said that they somewhat or strongly agree that, quote, major industries like healthcare, energy, and big tech should be nationalized to give more control and equity to the people, unquote. That's how we phrased the question. So it's just, this poll is fascinating, and I think it's really revealing that, younger Americans are really disillusioned with, frankly, free market capitalism. Now, it'd be nice if we actually gave free market capitalism a real shot in this country, because we don't have that. But they seem to think, and I think there's justification for this, and they see it in their own lives, that the economic system that they've grown up in doesn't seem to reward their work. It doesn't seem to value their position in society or their positions in their workplaces, because they just can't seem to get ahead. Now, if the economy improves, if interest rates finally start coming down so that younger people can afford, starter homes and things like that, perhaps we'll see these numbers turn around. But, what this poll, I think, shows on the top line is that, younger Americans just feel excluded from, what you would call the American dream, and feel that the system is rigged against them, or at least doesn't favor them. And so they are embracing, frankly, really troubling things like we should have the government running the entire healthcare industry, our energy industry, and also technology. As your listeners know, when you put government in charge of something like that, you get crappy stuff, and you get and it also becomes very expensive. I mean, the idea that the government, that big tech, I mean, what does that even mean? But big tech should be nationalized is absurd and troubling. But 76% said that they're in favor of a policy like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, just think of the censorship that would come with government in charge of social. We already went through that with COVID, but I'm glad you brought up that point that we don't really have a free market because the free market has been muddled, and from my perspective, that's part of the reason we have this problem with our youth turning to socialism. But on another, before we get into that, I want to ask you, how much do you blame the education system for this youthful embrace of socialism?
I think it's very much largely to blame. I mean, how could you not? I mean, we see, you see the the madness of our college campuses has been really exposed over the last few years. Especially since October 7th and the protests going on out there, and you see that young people in universities are taking to the streets and in embracing not just radical leftist policies, but also embracing, frankly, socialism. I mean, you look at the rise of Mamdani as the
Yes.
likely next mayor of New York City is going to make Bill de Blasio look like Milton Friedman. But, his support is mostly from, younger people. It's funny. It's weird. It's like his appeal is to young. The appeal of socialism, or I should say socialism seems to appeal, strangely, to educated young people and educated elderly people. If you look at the rallies for Mamdani in New York City, it's very, it's boomers and it's millennials and Gen Z. Whereas Gen X, which is me, kind of in the middle, grew up at a different time, and that kind of stuff doesn't have any appeal to us, in Gen X for the most part. But I think the education system that has been taken over by radical leftists, frankly, from K through 12 all the way through universities, but especially in the university system, American parents are sending their children into indoctrination centers, very expensive indoctrination centers, not really institutions of higher learning. They learn to hate their country. They are taught a romantic version of socialism instead of the reality of socialism and communism and totalitarianism and where it all leads. The history of the 20th century is a history of the failure and tragedy and death that comes from collectivism on a mass scale. And young people don't seem to be taught that anywhere in their high school classes or in their universities. And so they embrace something actually that, if you think about it, something that doesn't exist. As the great economist Milton Friedman said, there is no free lunch. Somebody's paying for something. All these things that you think you should get for free are not free. The laws of economics and supply and demand and incentives, financial incentives, are undefeated. They exist and they work, and they work whether you don't want them to work or not. If you want something for free, it's not really free. And the cost of that is not only scarcity and and crummier, whatever the socialized part of the economy is going to be crappier than the free market kind of that. But what you get on top of that, of scarcity, is you get the scarcity, and then you get how it's not very good. But they have this fantastical version of socialism in which everyone is taken care of. That socialism is just cooperating and being nice to each other. That's not what socialism is. Socialism is the seizing of the labor and the wealth of others to distribute to those who haven't earned it.
And, it's a very ugly ideology because even those who acknowledge what you were saying to be true, there's another element that says, I don't care. As long as I get mine, I don't care about what happens to the coming generations. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, and again, this was a poll of likely voters under the age of 40, and I think they look at the economy, they look at America as a pie, not as a growing pie, but as a pie, and that somebody is taking too much from that pie, and that's why I can't have anything. This idea that Bill Gates or Elon Musk are super wealthy, or even Jeff Bezos for that matter, are super wealthy because they're exploiting others. They're exploiting poor people. They're taking what is theirs and putting it in their pocket. That is a frankly childish and economically ignorant viewpoint, but it seems to be held very strongly by a lot of Americans under the age of 40 because they've been indoctrinated to believe that falsehood. The truth of the matter is that Elon Musk is supremely wealthy because he produces things and services that an enormous amount of people around the world want. Same thing you could say, especially for Jeff Bezos with in his Amazon empire. He's not wealthy unless he is producing something that people want, and that's Amazon. He's not getting rich because he's taking money out of people's pockets. So, this, I don't know how to fix this, to be honest. I wish I did, but it certainly would start with people taking a closer look at what is taught in their universities. When you send your young skull of mush, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, off to, Oberlin or something, you should be pretty careful about that, and you should maybe watch a little carefully and see how your son or daughter is thinking about the world when they come back, because they're not thinking about the world in a realistic way. They're thinking about it in a romantic way that is going to lead to, ironically, more misery than the younger generation now thinks they're actually experiencing.
They're not thinking at all, right? Basically. Yep. And let's go back to what you said about the watering of the free market and how that feeds into the growth of socialism. One of the things that I really don't like to see is when a corporation does something so wrong that it gives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez an actual point of argument to make that you have to agree with, right? I just don't like seeing that. I don't like agreeing with her in any way. But there are things that corporations have done in America that have fueled the embrace of socialism, and I wonder if you can point to some of those failures.
Well, gosh, where do you even start? I mean, you start with the idea that corporations are a creation of government. I mean, it's a legal designation. So corporatism, I can understand being against corporatism. That's the thing about this poll and the polls that we have done about socialism over the years with Rasmussen reports, is that what especially younger people think is free market capitalism or even just capitalism is actually in many respects corporatism. It's when corporations get in bed with government to rig, there's no other real word to use, to rig the economic system in their favor, and then in return they contribute to the to the re-election coffers of those politicians who are setting the rules in favor of their business models. Yeah, that's corporatism. That's not actually free market capitalism. The Heartland Institute, we're a free market think tank. We believe in private solutions and an actual operating private market. And what we have and have had in this country for you can go back to the robber baron era is a partnership between government and politicians and large corporations to ensure the success of those corporations and the re-election of politicians. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes the people who pay the price are consumers, are the little man. It's not always the case, but it is often the case. We had a chance to defeat Obamacare. I'll still never forget John McCain after promising to do it.
Horrible.
Looking with that snide look on his face,
yes.
and to the camera, putting his thumb down, and we had a chance to defeat Obamacare and didn't do it.
You and me both. That image, yes.
I can't get it out of my mind, Joe.
I know.
I'll never forget it. But that was our last chance to actually try to get some actual free market forces to reduce the costs of health insurance and health care, which are two different things, but to reduce those costs using free markets and using the price lowering effect of market competition. That was our last chance. John McCain denied us that chance. And now we have a healthcare system. And again, if you're young, you don't remember this. If you're 18 or 25, you don't remember this. It was that long ago. But we now have everybody listening to this podcast, Cheryl, knows that their health insurance costs have gone sky high.
Yep.
Since Obamacare.
Yep.
Everybody listening to this podcast knows that they get worse service at the hospital or with their even with their trusted primary doctor, that they by and large get worse service, and it's much more expensive than it was before before supposedly Obamacare fixed our healthcare system.
Yeah.
What it did is it fixed the corporate medical system into a permanent state of profit, and so because they are now exempt from any real free market forces to reduce the costs. And the same thing has happened to another wonderful thing happened during the Obama years, basically the federalization of student loans.
Mm-hmm.
So these young people are graduating from Oberlin or Penn State or wherever with a degree that doesn't have a lot of practical real world use and $200,000 worth of debt. That is because the incentives to make smarter choices about your post-high school education has been essentially eliminated because of guaranteed student loans by you and me through the federal government.
Yep.
And so when you take the free market influence out of any system, you're going to end up with higher costs and lower quality. The record on this is flawless. It's perfect, and it's unfortunate that this new upcoming generation seems to want even more of it, because they don't understand basic economics. They don't understand, frankly, how things used to be, and how there was at least a modicum of free market influence on prices on all sorts of industries, and those keep falling away one by one. And again, now they want them. That's why I thought it was so funny about this poll saying that they strongly agree that healthcare should be nationalized. Now, the United States is not Canada. We're not the UK with their NHS. We have a little bit more free, there's a little bit of incentive there that makes it different. It's not actually single payer, federally run healthcare system, but it's about as close as it can get. And it's, as I just pointed out, it's all over. Insurance premiums are sky high. A lot of small businesses can't afford to hire people because they can't afford the health care. They can't afford the benefits that they're forced to pay by government mandate. So, I just, it's discouraging. I hope we can, that they can snap out of this, that they can actually see where this leads. But I don't know. I try to be optimistic, but I'm finding it hard.
Well, let's finish with this one question now, because perhaps it might end on an optimistic note. Do you think some of the findings of these younger people embracing socialism is due to the very fact that they're young and they haven't been out on their own in the world, having to pay their own bills for that long? And it's sort of natural for younger people to be Democrats. Oh, why can't everybody be equal? Money grows on trees, that kind of thing. And it's only when you get in the real world and you realize the price of socks, for example, or, just food in general, that you realize that lower taxes are better, Republicans are lower taxes, and so forth. So do you think that this poll is just maybe a natural look at younger people, and they will naturally grow out of that?
Okay, I'll try to be optimistic, Cheryl.
Yeah. I'm throwing you a bone here.
Yeah, help me out. Yeah, I mean, that is, that's that famous, or maybe it's apocryphal quote from Winston Churchill, that if you're young and not a liberal, you have no heart, and if you're old and still a liberal, you have no brain.
Right.
These are the kinds of attitudes that you do grow out of. You grow out of them when you get married and have a child, and suddenly all of these positions that you held very strongly in your 20s melt away when you realize, as a parent, how the real world works and how your life is now dedicated to making sure that your child is protected and safe and has a chance to flourish. And so that those socialist dreams go away when you're frankly selfish about the ability of your child to get a good education, the ability of your child to get good health care. When those sorts of priorities are on the front burner for you, a lot of these romantic views of collectivism start to melt away. So all we have to do is just keep the marriage rate among the youth going high. Oh, that's not going great either. I told you couldn't shut me up, Cheryl. I told you.
Well, We need a good dose of reality, right? Otherwise, these things sneak in, and next thing we're just open communists, never mind socialists in America. Jim Lakely, it was such an interesting chat. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to be with you, Cheryl.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay blunt.